An Ustasha who cannot remove the child from the mother's womb with a dagger is not a good Ustasha. These words were attributed to Ante Pavelic, the leader of one of the cruelest fascist movements in history, which murdered more than 1 million Jews, Serbs and Gypsies during World War II. Between 1941 and 1945, Yugoslavia became a satellite state of the Axis powers, and reproduced in its territory the same methods of torture and extermination as the Nazis, although with a level of sadism and obsession with torture that surprised even the officers of the Third Reich. In this new military history video, we are going to learn about the story of its fearsome leader, and the grotesque war crimes that transformed him into one of the bloodiest dictators in history. Ante Pavelic was born in Herzegovina on July 14, 1889, and lived an uprooted childhood, with constant moves due to his father's railway work. The first big change in his life occurred when he moved to Zagreb to study law. It was then that he joined a Croatian nationalist group. Pavelic rose rapidly in the world of politics, becoming a member of the Yugoslav National Parliament. In 1927, he began a long communication with Fascist Italy asking for advice to solve what he described as the Croat problem, which was directly linked to coexistence with other ethnic groups within Yugoslav territory. Any similarity with the way in which the Third Reich referred to the situation of Jewish citizens is not purely coincidental, rather it is a thermometer of the climate of racial violence that was cooking in the bowels of Europe. Pavelic's rise was interrupted in 1929 by the dictatorship of King Alexander I of Yugoslavia, forcing all pro-Croat militants to appease their rhetoric or flee the country. Pavelic opted for the second option and, during his stay in Italy, he obtained support and subsidies from the Italian government, promising Mussolini a handover of territory in exchange for help to take over the government of Yugoslavia. This is how the Ustasha nationalist organization was born, which we can translate as insurgents. On April 6, 1941, the forces of the Wehrmacht and other Axis countries invaded Yugoslavia. Pavelic returned to his lands eager for revenge and with hundreds of Ustasha supporters along with Italian soldiers. Finally, on April 10, the new independent state of Croatia was proclaimed, led by Pavelic and closely controlled by Germany and Italy, whose institutions he reproduced. Pavelic established a totalitarian state with his figure at the center. He considered himself a warlord, the restorer of Croatian splendor. His government was based on the cult of the nation, the state and the ethnic separation between the Croats and the other ethnic groups that make up the Yugoslav population. Pavelic did not believe in democracy or in the decisions made by the cabinet. The direction of the country was marked by a small table made up of the dictator's trusted men. Like all fascist dictatorships, the Ustasha political program contemplated ethnic cleansing, mainly aimed at Jews, Serbs, Gypsies and the Croatian communist opposition. Anti-Semitic laws gave a legal framework to a persecution practically modeled on the Third Reich, and soon at least 25 concentration and extermination camps were opened, such as Jasenovac, where at least 600,000 people were murdered. Neither the women nor the children escaped the scythe of the Ustasha, much less the Serbian priests. Orthodox churches on Croatian territory were also destroyed. Germany enthusiastically supported the extermination of Jews, but not the killing of Orthodox Serbs, who in principle had no problem with the Third Reich. The first major Ustasha massacre occurred in 1942, when 4 guardsmen killed almost 2,000 people in a single night, after betting who could kill the most people in a few hours. One of them, Milfra Ganovic, came to confess that the look of a kneeling farmer before being executed froze his blood. According to his testimony, he ripped off both of his ears and forced him to pronounce "Long life Pavelic," but the farmer did not say so. His only words were, "Do your job, creature." This enraged the guard so much that he gouged out his eyes, his heart, and slit his throat. Unlike their German counterparts, the Croats liked to show off what they did. They did not hide, on the contrary, they posed with decapitated heads and corpses for the photos. Many victims were thrown alive off cliffs or killed at the edge of large pits. Before, we told you about the extermination camps, the most infamous being Jasenovac. From there arise the most terrible stories. Children burned alive, others drowned in the river, babies hacked to death, girls and infants as young as 12 sexually abused, all in the presence of their parents. The Ustasha used to stick needles into the prisoners' fingernails and pour salt into their wounds, causing unimaginable pain. Furthermore, for the most fervent militants, the eyes, nose and ears of the victims were like trophies. One of the more grotesque accounts comes from the Italian war correspondent, Curzio Malaparte. He claimed that during an interview with Ante Pavelic in his office, he saw a wicker basket that seemed to be full of mussels or oysters. The fascist leader explained with a smile that it was a gift from my loyal Ustachas, 20 kilos of human eyes. Many Croats have questioned this story, but the truth is that the Ustachas had a morbid fixation with the anatomy of their victims. They even made necklaces with tongues, eyes and ears. As in the Nazi concentration camps, the Croats also used gas chambers, although not to the same extent. But what really characterized them was the use of srbošćak knives, a kind of glove to which a razor was attached, specially created to slit the throats of Serbs. To get a real dimension of the level of Ustaša cruelty, keep in mind that the German commanders used to visit the area to verify that it was being handled according to the guidelines. Those soldiers returned to Germany with upset stomachs and scandalized by the ineffective methods used by the Ustashas. The German general Gless von Horstenow wrote in his diary in November 1942 that the Ustashas cut the throats of hundreds of people on both sides of the Sava River. When they cut throats on our side, we could hardly bear the screams of men, women and children. They cut their throats and cut open their abdomens before throwing them into the river. The end of Pavelic's dictatorship was motivated both by his political failures and by the constant resistance of the Croatian Communist Party, lined up behind Marshal Tito. Giving up territory to Italy was not well received by the population, since it put Croatia in a completely subservient position compared to its Italian neighbor. To this was added a bad economic situation, a product of supporting the presence of German troops in Croatia with state resources. In a lousy economic strategy, Pavelic gave major port cities to the Italian regime. In 1944 there was even an attempted coup. Pavelic's ministers communicated with the Allies to agree on a peaceful exit, avoiding falling into the hands of the Red Army. But this failed, and Croatia remained fascist until the last day, being occupied by the Soviet Union in 1945. The most seasoned militants of the Ustasha were shot. Pavelic fled and, with the help of the Catholic Church, hid in Italy, Argentina and Franco Spain, dying in 1959 due to health problems derived from an attack suffered in 1957. One of the most sadistic tyrants in history, he managed to evade justice for more than 10 years, and even died in freedom. This is how we come to the end of the video. If you want to continue learning about this type of impressive stories, we invite you to subscribe and activate notifications. For the moment, we say goodbye until the next episode of Military History.